6,800 Americans ushered in the new year of 1777 east of Trenton along Assunpink Creek. The British had pulled back to Princeton, 11 miles away. Lord Charles Cornwallis, who had chased Washington's army across the New Jersey countryside, moved to confront Washington with over 8,000 troops, including a body of Hessians intent on revenge. Washington intended to meet them on good ground, yet with the Delaware River at his back, there was no easy way to escape if the British forced a retreat. To buy time, Washington orders 1,000 men to harass Cornwallis's force as they approach from the north. The delaying force falls back across a stone bridge over Assunpink Creek. As British musket balls whistle by, Washington rode to the bridge to greet them, inspiring confidence and assurance to his men. Assured of his army's superiority, Cornwallis orders 3 successive and bloody assaults across the narrow bridges and lower fords. In the face of blistering American cannon and musket fire, all British attempts fail as the light disappears. For his brash assault, Cornwallis lost 365 men. For the Americans, who continued to hold their defensive line along the creek, the losses were 100. For the second time in 2 weeks, Washington and his ragtag army had proven their mettle against some of the best combat troops in the world. Despite his losses, Cornwallis is convinced he has Washington cornered and resolves to finish him off at dawn. But one of his subordinates, Sir William Erskine, warns, if Washington is the general I take him to be, he will not be found in the morning. Discovering that a northern ford provides access to Washington's vulnerable right flank, Erskine advises an immediate attack. Across the Assunpink, Washington lays out the stakes for his officers. The loss of this army might be fatal to the country, but a retreat in the face of the enemy would also have lasting negative consequences. They were in a double bind. American Brigadier General Arthur St. Clair proposes a novel solution. The roads northward appeared open. The army could move out of danger, outflank Cornwallis, and take Princeton. Despite some naysayers, all soon agreed it was a daring option. They could escape the danger of Cornwallis's larger army. And ever aware of public opinion, Washington was sure of one thing. This move would at least avoid the appearance of a retreat. With the support of his officers, Washington approved the plan. But would they have time to move before Cornwallis attacks? And could they slip away without detection? The bright fires of the American camp, visible well into the early morning, showed that Washington's men were settled in. General Cornwallis remained confident, saying, "We've got the old fox safe now. We'll go over and bag him in the morning." But the American campfires were a ruse, left behind to cover Washington's move. At dawn, Cornwallis was shocked to discover his opponent had slipped away and was on his way to Princeton. The Fox had just executed one of the most brilliant flanking maneuvers in military history. Washington marched his army in 2 columns throughout the night to Princeton. As the Americans approach, Colonel Charles Mahood, moving south to reinforce Cornwallis with 450 grenadiers, Scottish Highlanders, and dragoons, spots Nathaniel Greene's force. Assessing the situation quickly, Mahood immediately attacks across a rising field. The battle begins on Clark Farm. After a vicious, bloody firefight, Mawhood orders bayonets fixed and breaks an American brigade led by General Hugh Mercer. Thinking they've cornered the chief rebel himself, General Washington, the British surround, taunt, and bayonet Mercer, leaving him for dead. The arrival of a force under Cadwalader staves off defeat. Aided by a pair of 4-pound cannons, they slow the British onslaught. But even these efforts prove insufficient, and Cadwalader's men soon begin to give way. At this moment, Washington himself arrives on the spot, again exposing himself to musket fire, rallying his men with the cry,
"Parade with us, my brave fellows."
Leading his advance, they force the British to break and run. Galloping after the broken remnants, Washington shouts,
"It is a fine fox chase, my boys."
Mawhood and his garrison ultimately flee Princeton, leaving it to the Americans. The British were retreating. In just a matter of weeks, Washington and his army had shattered the illusion of British invincibility. Washington had won at Trenton twice and drove the British from Princeton. Now he contemplates yet another roll of the dice. Brunswick holds a tantalizing cache of stockpiles and few British defenders. But with little sleep in the past 2 days, his troops are beyond exhaustion. So on January 7th, Washington and the remainder of his victorious army head towards the mountain retreat at Morristown, New Jersey. From here, his army supports the local militias, harassing the British and raiding the countryside, eliminating their supply routes and sources of food. Like 1,000 wasp stings, the raids ultimately force the British to the relative safety and comfort of New York City. With his army now safely positioned around Morristown, Washington was forced to confront an even deadlier enemy, disease. His battle-worn citizen soldiers, huddled in winter encampments, are prime targets for the great killer of the Revolution, smallpox. Fearing discovery through British agents, Washington boldly orders that his entire army be quietly inoculated. This action, mandated in all Continental Army camps, would save countless lives, lives of the very soldiers who would continue the fight for freedom. Facing what seemed to most on both sides as certain defeat, a ragtag force of Continentals had stunned the British and the world. Washington's bold stroke across the Delaware led to the defeat of 3 different Hessian and British forces in one brilliant campaign. The once mighty British Army, numbering 31,000 in the summer of 1776, had now been reduced to less than half that number, and its great gains of territory had been largely wiped away in New Jersey. Frederick the Great, King of Prussia and one of the world's great military minds, called Washington's exploits those 10 fateful days the most brilliant of any recorded in the annals of military achievements. At the center of this great strategic reversal stood General George Washington. Undaunted by the staggering losses of the summer of 1776, he provided the critical leadership that saved the remnants of the Continental Army and compelled them to victory at Trenton and Princeton. His strength, tempered by flexibility and an open ear, built an army able to absorb defeat, win victories, and able to turn the dream of a new nation into a lasting reality.